We are speaking to Professor Julie Greenberg, Thomas Jefferson School of Law, and our topic today is recent rulings by two different federal court districts about same-sex marriage, and of course one in California involved our own Proposition 8. So people are wondering what the import of these two decisions is and how it's going to affect the future of this issue.
So as you said, they're two pretty important decisions, but they both relate to same-sex marriage, but two totally different issues. So let me start with the Ninth Circuit, the California decision. That decision was about the validity of Proposition 8 and whether the Prop 8 measure that amended the California Constitution to deny same-sex couples the right to marry is unconstitutional under the U.S. Constitution. And what the Ninth Circuit did in that case is it said that it is unconstitutional. So we had a small panel of Ninth Circuit judges, just 3 judges, who declared it unconstitutional. The proponents of Prop 8 appealed it to the full panel of Ninth Circuit judges, and they said, we're not going to hear it, which leaves the lower court or the 3-panel judge ruling still in effect. The case in the First Circuit was not about a state constitutional provision or state statute. That's about a federal statute. It's about what's called Doma, which stands for the Defense of Marriage Act. And Doma is a statute that Congress adopted in the late 1990s that said for purposes of federal law, not state law, if a state recognizes a marriage between a same-sex couple, the federal government will not recognize it. So a heterosexual couple, let's use Massachusetts. A heterosexual couple in Massachusetts gets married, they automatically file joint tax returns, they get Social Security benefits, all the federal rights that go along with being married. If a same-sex couple gets married in Massachusetts, they can't file joint tax returns, they can't seek Social Security benefits if Doma is constitutional. A number of couples challenged it, and what the First Circuit said is Doma is unconstitutional. You can't give married couples that are heterosexuals rights and not give those same rights to same-sex couples. And so we have 2 circuit court decisions on same-sex marriage issues, both of whom granted greater rights to marriage and the benefits of marriage to same-sex couples.
So what happens next? There's talk of the cases going to the Supreme Court. Would they go together, and how would this work?
So the losing parties in both cases have already announced that they plan to petition for cert to the U.S. Supreme Court. And a petition for cert is discretionary. The court does not have to grant it. They deny the vast majority of petitions. And the big question is, what will the Supreme Court do? They could hear the cases together. They could deny cert on both, or they could grant cert on only one. Most people are predicting that they pretty much have to grant cert on the First Circuit decision because that ends up with a very interesting situation. If they leave the First Circuit decision in effect, that means same-sex couples in the First Circuit have to be given federal benefits, but not in any other circuit. And that would just be such a result that would be so hard to administer and considered so inequitable that I think the court has to hear it and resolve the issue of whether Doma is constitutional throughout the land or unconstitutional throughout the land.
How has the Justice Department been acting with regard to Doma over the recent past?
So, as many people already know, Obama has said that he believes that that portion of Doma is unconstitutional. And so, but the Justice Department has to enforce the laws that Congress passes, even if they think they're unconstitutional. So the executive branch is still enforcing Doma. They won't let you file a joint tax return. They won't let you receive Social Security benefits. But they're refusing to argue that Doma is constitutional in the court. So they're in court saying Doma is unconstitutional, which is why we now have a group of Republicans in Congress who have taken over the litigation, arguing Doma is unconstitutional.
So, down the road, there are many that feel same-sex marriage is inevitable in this country, that it will be recognized universally someday. What has to happen before that someday comes?
For major social changes, the Supreme Court tends to work incrementally. You know, you have a minor change and then another change. And that's pretty much what these two cases are about. Because the case in the First Circuit doesn't say that any state has to grant couples the right to marry. All it says that is if a state chooses to grant the right to marry, the federal government can't ignore the state law that gives them the right to marry. So that's an incremental change. If the Supreme Court grants cert in the Ninth Circuit case, which I think is less likely than the First Circuit, I think the First Circuit is pretty much, we know they're going to grant cert. The Ninth Circuit, some people have argued they will, some have argued that they won't. If they do grant cert in the Ninth Circuit, again, they can do a very limited holding because the Ninth Circuit did a very limited holding. All that the Ninth Circuit said is California, with the unique circumstances of giving same-sex couples the right to marry and then taking it away, that's what's unconstitutional. So a ruling there would just say the unique circumstances of California, and I'll tell you, those circumstances exist nowhere else in the United States. So that would be a limited ruling, and then we'd have the First Circuit limited ruling. So that would be a move towards allowing same-sex marriage, but not a universal mandate. And I think a universal mandate is not in the near future. I just don't think the Supreme Court will require states to allow same-sex couples to marry. What they might do is another incremental change, is if a couple marries, so say a couple marries in Massachusetts and then moves to Oklahoma. They might, as an incremental change, say Oklahoma has to recognize the marriage from Massachusetts, but not tell Oklahoma that it has to marry same-sex couples.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Very illuminating.